Bits and Bones, and welcome to my channel. My name is Slady V, and today we're going to be talking about the movie Oculus. Oculus is a movie that I liked ever since it came out, but as a dumb teenager, I buried my opinion under self-doubt because a friend of mine said that she thought it was stupid. Which means, obviously, I'm uncultured swine for liking it in the first place. Wrong. I am now a horror thriller expertise lady, so my opinion is valid. And it always has been, I guess. Honestly, I just don't think that Oculus got enough attention, and the only reason that it did was because it had the actress River from Doctor Who in it, which is why my initial friend when I was a teenager watched it, and then she was like, I don't even like horror movies, so obviously she wasn't gonna like that one. But when you're young, you don't really think about that sort of thing. You just want validation and approval and to have, you know, similar opinions to everyone else, so you're not weird. I changed my mind and decided to do my own review for it when I saw that Chris Stuckman had done a review and that he liked it, so I was allowed to like it, and I'll get over this mentality someday, eventually, when I'm less stupid. So anyway, what is Oculus and what is it about? Oculus follows two siblings, Kaylee and Tim. We open with Tim getting out of a mental hospital that he's been in since they were kids, and their parents died. The papers that reported on it got one story, but the kids know something sinister led to the destruction of their family, more so than just a loving husband turned into an abusive killer. A decade later, Kaylee and Tim set out to prove their father's innocence and put a stop to the corrupting force that ruined their family initially. If it sounds like you would enjoy Oculus, I suggest go watching it, check it out, because from this point forward I am going to get into spoilers talking about what actually happens, what I liked, and why I think it deserves more praise than it got initially. A non-spoiler but kind of vague criticism might be, if you decide to watch it, that the ending is predictable, but it's still very satisfying. At least I found it very satisfying. And I'd argue that it's not all about the ending. The movie really is, like, its core, and what's so good about it is the flashback narrative. So that's what I'll start with talking about. As adults, Kaylee and Tim bring the haunted mirror, the Oculus, and the corrupting force that I talked about earlier, that ruined their parents, to their old home, and attempt to document its ways of corruption, ways of corruption, the way it corrupts people. As they get deeper into their time with the mirror, it grows stronger and affects them differently. As this happens, the movie also cuts back to scenes from when they were children. We see the mirror's effects on their parents and on them as adults simultaneously, and it makes for a very engaging narrative. As they struggle with manipulation and visions in real time, where we have to question with them what's real and what's not, we also get to see what they saw as kids, which was an objective look at the same thing taking their parents over. The parallel stories complement each other, and Oculus outperforms most other movies in their use of flashbacks. Movies tend to kind of fuck up in the flashback department, at least when it's like action movies or horror movies. I'd say movies that are strictly driven by real-time non-fiction narratives, it's not such a problem, but they kind of jump the gun when it's fictional, and the flashbacks give a little bit too much away. We flash back in Oculus to the main characters going through the same dangerous or spooky shit. In other movies, we flash back to main characters going through some dangerous or spooky shit, and it's hard to care because we already know that they survive. It loses all tenseness when movies do that, but Oculus doesn't. We'll talk a little more about it. The great thing about Oculus and its flashbacks is that it's not trying to get us with some cheap thrills. It's actually narrative building. Yes, it is trying to be a little bit spooky. I mean, it is kind of spooky, seeing it from the child's perspective. But the real focus is on showing us what actually happens to the parents. We know they die already, which is something that most movies, when using flashbacks, fuck up. We know that things get fucked up, but we're hooked on seeing just how fucked up, like what actually happened. It's kind of a morbid fascination that it plays with. But since the flashbacks are lined up with the real-time characters, we're also getting glimpses of what they're dealing with from another perspective. We can sort of see what's going to happen, but we also have to guess exactly how it's going to happen. Another thing that Oculus excelled at was the way it handled its exposition. We are introduced to the story with Tim coming out of therapy. He's all but sworn off his childhood experience as trauma-induced hallucinations, and he's ready to rejoin the normal world. Unlike Tim, Kaylee leaned into the experience over the time that they were separated. She spent years researching and hunting down the Oculus to take revenge. When she introduces Tim to the scheme, not only is he understandably opposed to the very idea that it's haunted, because he's already overcome this mentally, which makes him the perfect natural force of skepticism that all horror movies forcefully insert. But Kaylee, in her process of convincing him, convinces us. And what I meant about forcefully inserted in other horror movies is like that one character that's just opposed to believing literally anything, even though the evidence is insurmountable, and they're like, I just refuse to believe this because vampires don't exist. Or whatever other thing, like ghosts aren't real, until the moment they actually get killed by it, because they were so blatantly the opposing skeptic. In Oculus, Kaylee is also recording everything. She makes a documentary. So as she's listing off incidents and facts, she's doing it for us, but she's also doing it for Tim and doing it for the camera. So it's a way to introduce a seamless need for lengthy explanation. I'm not saying that there isn't heavy-handed, lengthy explanation, but it makes complete sense within the narrative of the story itself. It's not just a character explaining this to us for no goddamn reason. What gives Oculus an interesting element is the specifics of the haunting itself. The mirror kills surrounding plants, it eats small animals apparently, it forces hallucinations, and physically dehydrates you. In the end, we see that it also keeps the souls of the people that it kills, which is a common trait for possessed mirrors throughout any kind of storytelling, which is the only thing that took away from the movie's greatness. For me, maybe it's just because I haven't watched enough haunted films or haunted mirror specific films, but I thought that those physical elements, that the 1, 2, 3, 4 steps of it getting stronger, the very specifics and the way that it interacts with the physical world was just, it felt more real because it was so specific. I don't know. It's like a boss villain amping up that you get to play against multiple times. So you start to know the strats, but at the same time, if you're not leveled up enough, you really can't help it anyway. Can't fight against it. So we spend the whole movie alongside Kaylee and Tim as kids and adults battling this mirror, and the intensity comes from how the Oculus manipulates its victims. It gets in their head and it fucks with them until it gets exactly what it wants. The fact that it keeps the souls is a bit of an afterthought and a non-factor. It doesn't show up until the end when it manifests the people that it's taken. And it was honestly, like, that specifically was overkill, and it ruined the good thing that it had going for it. It's a haunted mirror. It doesn't need physical threats outside of the real people that it's controlling. Like, physical manifestations of spooky beings. When I was watching it with my boyfriend, that was the one thing that he didn't like. He said that the movie was great, except it really should have just pulled back and stayed with what it was doing. As soon as it had the really spooky people show up, it was kind of like, oh, of course they did that. Every movie has to do that. So overall, the ramping of the movie was good, even though the ending was pretty easy to guess as soon as the full premise was out on the table. It wasn't a bad ending, it was just obvious, and it gets some points off for that. That said, that the ending symmetry, the imagery and the symmetry of the narratives throughout the entire thing and the timelines was really, really satisfying. With, like, the tiniest, like, the minorest shortcomings, I'm going to give Oculus a 4 out of 5 stars on our chart of stars, which means that it was entirely above average. Oculus had intense pacing and storytelling. The fact that it kept flashbacks so engaging is the thing that put it above all of the rest, and just that factor alone was what made me like it so much. So that's the end of the video. It was a kind of short one this time. I'm hoping to do more shorter videos than, well, The Foundation anyway. I just had a lot to say about that one. This one was kind of a an easier, more digestible one. I've liked Oculus for a very long time, and I just wanted to give it a little, like, hey, maybe you should check it out. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to support me, I have my Patreon and my Buy Me a Coffee in the links below. But just generally, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.